Hello there, I'm Jimmy Vegas and this is how to create an FPS game in Unity, and welcome to episode 7. In this tutorial we're going to add in a muzzle flash to our weapon, and we're also going to add in a very simple piece of UI so we can see where we're actually aiming our weapon right now. Don't forget, click subscribe button and click on the bell icon as well to stay up to date with every tutorial still to come in this series and everything else on game development on my channel. And if you've enjoyed this series so far, please feel free to check me out on Patreon or YouTube memberships where you'll earn things like early access, exclusive content, project files, and so much more. With that in mind, let's get to work. So if you don't know what a muzzle flash is, the best way to describe it is when you fire a weapon in any kind of FPS game or anything with a gun really, you will see like a kind of a bright orange flash very quickly. And it's not necessarily always orange, it could be different colours depending on what you're doing. But for all intents and purposes, this pistol is going to have a nice orange fiery kind of quick flash. So to do that, we're going to bring in a texture, and also it's probably worth mentioning since the last tutorial I've just added a couple more bits to this scene just to kind of close it off a little bit, that's all. So let's go to our textures and let's drag and drop this flash texture, and you can get this as always on the website. If you head over there, downloads and assets at FPS, and then tutorial number 7, you can download it for free. Just make sure you unzip it before you try bringing it into Unity. So how do we do this? Well, it's actually very simple. There's loads of different ways of achieving the same kind of thing in Unity, and you don't necessarily have to do it the exact same way as me. It's whatever you feel most comfortable with. So what we're going to do is on the FPS controller, on the first person character, on the weapons, and then on pistol, let's right click and let's go down to 3D object and let's click on plane. You'll notice this little square beneath our weapon. That's going to represent the muzzle flash. So we need to apply that texture to this object. So let's click on plane and let's drag this flash object over here. And it will look a bit funny. For me, it's instantly gone to what it needs to be. For you, it may look like this. Sometimes it can just kind of work, I guess. Other times, probably not. I think for most people it may come up like this. If it's already set for you, don't worry about it. But if it comes up like still a black square with just a flame in the middle, we just need to change the shader. And shaders are something we'll probably end up getting into at some point in this series. They're very handy for different things. But for now, we just need to change the shader to particles and then to priority additive. And it will turn it into a flame. So all the black that we could see has now disappeared and it's now a flame. So we now need to rotate this flame so it actually looks more appropriate for our weapon, because at the moment it just looks like that. So we need to rotate it and shift it into place. So I'm going to rotate on the X by 90 degrees. I'm going to rotate on the Y by 180. And if we look in game, you can see roughly it's starting to take place. So we just need to bring it up, bring it forward to probably round about there. So when we fire the weapon, it will look a little like that, but obviously not quite as rough as that. So we're going to add a little bit of light to it as well. So let's turn that back on. Let's right click on that plane and let's go to light down here, and we'll go to point light. So it's going to be a very sharp illumination in a very short area. So we need the range to be relatively small, but we need the intensity to be relatively high in comparison. So let's put the intensity as 50, and you can see just how much that impacts. That looks absolutely crazy. Next, what we need to do is let's change the color. Now what we're going to do is we're going to change the color to something that is relative to what we're doing here. Now to do that, we click the little pipette tool there, and we can select any color. So I'm going to go for a darkish orange for the light. Not too dark, but not too light. So let's go with about that. And you can see just how that's illuminated. Now let's reduce the range to just 1 and see how that looks when we turn it off and turn it back on in the game view. So we can see it's having a very small impact. Let's change our rendering mode to important. And let's play around with our range and our intensity. So I'm thinking if we change the intensity to maybe 40 and change the range to 2, I think 2 might be too much. Let's stick with 1. So it might be something worth playing around with for you. You know, take your time to actually build this and make it a little better. Now let's rename that plane. Let's change it to Muzzleflash. Next thing we need to do is we need to go into our script to be able to control when this muzzle flash comes on. So I'm going to quickly click back into scene view, and on our global control script, remember that pistol fire script we wrote? Let's head into that script. So in here, we're now going to need to declare another variable. That variable is just going to be the muzzle flash. Now the good thing about this is the light is already attached to our muzzle flash. That means that the light will also turn on when our muzzle flash turns on. So we don't need to set the light as an extra variable and waste time. So let's head to the top, and where we've got public bool is firing equals false. Let's go under that and add one more variable. Stating it in the same way as we did with the black pistol, it's going to be a game object. So public game object, we'll call this muzzle flash with a semicolon. Now we're going to modify this coroutine. So at the moment it takes 0.25 seconds for that whole sequence to play out. But what we want to do is we don't want that muzzle flash to appear on screen for all of those 0.25 of a second. We want it to actually display for a lot smaller. So the trick is we need to split this line out. So what we're going to do is beneath where we play the pistol fire, we're going to say muzzle flash dot set active, and in brackets true with a semicolon. So what we're doing with that line of code is we are saying whatever object is defined as muzzle flash will be on screen, so it will be turned on. That means after, let's say, 0.05 seconds, we then want to turn it off. So yield return new wait for seconds, and in brackets 0.05 f with a semicolon, and then we do the inverse of that muzzleflash.setActive true. So it will be muzzleflash.setActive, and in brackets false with a semicolon. So because we've added an extra 0.05 seconds here, we actually need to remove 0.05 seconds here. And that basically means getting rid of that 5 there. So to quickly recap these extra lines of code, how many is it? Just 4 extra lines of code, isn't it? Because we've got this one here, and then these 3. So 3 extra lines of code, and we've got our muzzle flash functioning. So all we've done is just add that extra variable, told it to come on in the correct place, wait for a specified amount of time, and then turn it off in the correct place, and then carry on as normal. So if we save our scene now and head back into Unity and quickly let it compile, what we need to do is turn muzzle flash off. Come on. There we go. So let's turn muzzle flash off, so it's no longer active in our scene. Let's go to global control and just set that extra variable here. And remember, we can just drag and drop, place it in there. And that script now knows that muzzle flash is indeed this object right here. So if we press play, everything still functions as normal. But you can see now we've got that quick flash of our weapon whenever we fire. Now obviously there's no sound to it yet, that's still to come, but the idea is we've now created a quick muzzle flash. And I think realistically at this point, I always say it in my tutorials, I kind of speed through a lot of these things just to show you how it's done. It's then your task to refine that, make it better, you know, play around with the material, work with the times. If that's on for too long in your game, reduce the time it's on. So all you would really do is head to your script, let's say reduce that to 0.03, and then just add the extra 2 there. So we've reduced the time here, but increased the time here. As long as it still makes up that 1/4 of a second, everything will still function as normal. Like I say, or just play around with everything that you do here just to make it relative and relevant. So the next step to all of this is adding a little bit of UI. So what is UI? UI is known as a GUI or a HUD. It's basically just imagery on the screen that's overlaid. So you've got an ammo count, you've got a health meter, you've got crosshairs, all that is considered UI. So to do that, let's go to Game Object, let's go to UI, and let's go to Raw Image just for now. Now you'll notice a couple of objects do appear on our screen. One is called Canvas, one is called Raw Image, and one is called Event System. We don't need to worry about Event System, we can just consider this as part of the functionality of what we're doing. The canvas itself, if we double click, we can see this white outline, and this white outline represents our screen view. Now, for all intents and purposes, most people are going to be creating this for something on PC or something like that, on Steam or whatever. And at this point in time, the standard size is 1080p full HD. Obviously, in the future, if you are watching this in the future, 4K, 8K could be a thing, whatever. So the next step, what we're going to do is very dependent on the resolution you want to personally aim for. The UI will scale correctly depending on the resolution. All we need to do is go to Canvas Scaler right here. And where we have UI scale mode, let's select this to scale with screen size. Set the target, what you want it to be. In this case, it's 1920 by 1080. And we need to match it dead in the middle. So I like to put 0.5. So it scales pretty much both horizontally and vertically, depending on your resolution. I usually find that's a nice way to work with it. So that's all we really need to know with Canvas, other than the fact that every bit of UI is stored inside the canvas. The other object that we have is Raw Image. So there are multiple different things you can have as UI. Obviously, Raw Image is the one we have here that we're going to use first. And we're basically just going to use this as a little dot in the middle of our screen to see where we're currently aiming. We'll make it more dynamic as we go along. So when we fire, we recoil a bit and our crosshairs expand a little bit, that kind of thing. But for now, we just need to know where we're aiming. So the first thing we're going to do is up here, we have this little cross or X or whatever you want to call it. This is the anchor. That means we can set any particular piece of UI in a certain piece of the screen whenever it starts. So for example, if we were to set it in the center here, it would always be relative to the center no matter the size of the screen. If we were to place it down here, it will be once again relative depending on the size of the screen. Now, what you'll notice is as I've clicked left and right, it's actually switched over here. Reason for that is just because we're currently looking at the back of the canvas. So to do that, let's just pan around, switch across, and pan back around. And there's the front of the canvas. So it's always worth being mindful of how you're looking at the canvas, because sometimes it can be hard to tell. But you can always tell which way you are looking at, whether it's front or back, just by quickly checking the anchoring positions. Now, because we want this center screen, we're going to click on Dead Center, which means we're going to put the position as 0, 0. So that is dead center of our screen. And if we click Game, we can see that is exactly where our weapon is aiming. That's the center. That's our cursor, our reticle, whatever you want to call it. However, it's a little bit too big. So let's shrink this down. Let's select the width as 4 and the height also as 4. And that is still going to be dead center. And you can see it just there. If that's too small, you can increase it. If it's too big, decrease it even more. If we press play, it will stick with us as the center of where our weapon is looking. So far, so good. So like I say, that's something that's probably going to be advanced more and more as we go along. For now, it serves its purpose. It tells us exactly where we're shooting, and that's exactly what we need. So next tutorial, we're going to delve even more into UI. We're going to have some numbers on our screen which reflect how much ammo we've got, and we're also going to add in a sound effect to that weapon, because it's kind of creepy that weapon's firing but doesn't make a sound. So we're going to add some sound effects. So until that next tutorial, thanks very much for watching, guys.